It's not just your logo. Some people put those together and say logo is brand, and it's so much more than that, but it's also, your mission and values, why you do what you do. It's every interaction someone has with the secretary in the office, or the principal talking about the school, or the textbooks you use, your website, really all those things. Even when you go out and play sports in the community, all those things make up your brand. It's much more comprehensive than just, we have a logo, or we have some colors.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
We have all heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. And while I know what that's trying to say, it just doesn't happen. We do pick up a book and immediately begin judging that book by what we see. Is it captivating? Is it engaging? Does it look weird? Is there mystery? And this is true all around us. When we're looking at houses, the inside may be beautiful, but when you pull up and the yard is totally unkept, the numbers are crooked on the house, there's random items scattered in the yard, you project that outside image to the inside. And honestly, you may never even go look inside that house. We are creatures of the first look, or the first impression. And that first impression can really determine your next step, for better or for worse. And it goes beyond that. What we see in one area also projects on other areas, even beyond the first impression. Have you ever gotten a mailer from a store and it was just a steady stream of corny ads or tacky puns or just a badly designed graphic? And you may never go to that store, but you have a perception of what they are and what they offer based on that advertisement. It's no different with Christian schools. People are daily passing our signs and our buildings and our playgrounds. They may never come in, but they feel like they know us by what they see. Our families are all involved at different levels, but much of what they know about us is by what they see and read coming from us. The impact of the visual is so powerful, and that's where we're headed in today's podcast. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. The heart of the Teacher Edition podcast is to be practical, uplifting, and God-honoring. So whether you join in each week or this is your first visit, we're so glad you're joining us, and we trust that you'll walk away with something that is a help and a blessing to you. If you haven't already, take a minute to subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to follow us on social media. We're Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Teacher Edition Pod. One more time, that's Teacher Edition Pod. Don't forget that we're also on YouTube now. You can find us as Teacher Edition Podcast. And just before we unpack today's topic, I want to invite you to go to our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to our emails and also submit your questions and stories. It only takes a minute to record your questions, so just go do it. We look forward to receiving those and to sharing them on the show. As we have questions and stories, we will share those at the end of the episode, so be sure to listen all the way to the end of the interviews each time. So today we're going to talk about branding, marketing, and design for Christian schools. And by Christian schools, I'm talking all levels of the Christian school, from the classroom newsletter to the school sign out front. And just a plug, no matter what position you are in at a school, this episode is for you. Branding, marketing, and design are such vital elements. And I know from being an educator, most Christian schools don't have the luxury of having a branding specialist or a trained designer on their staff to oversee the brand and even the marketing of the school. We often pull from willing talent or just do our best where we can. We have a special treat today. I am so excited to have Christin O'Bryan with us. Kristen is all of those things. She's talented and she's trained in the area of branding and design. She has a heart for Christian education. She's the daughter of a Christian school teacher, attended a Christian school in Central Illinois, and she will tell you she's the result of many Christian educators pouring into her life. She's worked with educational organizations for the majority of her 18 years as a creative professional, and for the last 10 plus years, she's specialized in brand creation, application, and marketing. She's designed and consulted on Christian school branding projects. She's worked at the university level, helping to create and apply brand designs across the retail services, events, even fundraising campaigns. She's worked for 10 years on designing collegiate athletic facilities for many top schools that you would even know in the Southeast and around the country. So currently, she's serving here at BJU Press as the brand specialist. She works daily on the development and implementation of strategies that are enhancing how our customers experience BJU Press and our products. She also serves as an adjunct professor teaching students as they prepare for their careers in this field. So I think you can see that Kristen brings a lot to the table. Kristen, I'm so excited you're here. This is really a treat for all of us.
Jenny, I'm so excited to be with you today too and get to talk all things branding and marketing and design. I love doing this, what I do every day, because I feel like it really makes an impact. And I love seeing it be able to make an impact for schools and specifically for Christian schools as they make a huge impact in the lives of lots of students and families and the communities that they're in.
That's perfect. That's great for this podcast. Okay, so start off for us defining some terms. So terms like branding, they're pretty broad and they're applied differently. So I think we will all understand better what you're going to share with us later in the podcast if we start on the same page. So what is brand or what is branding?
Absolutely. So when I talk about branding, like you mentioned, you might come to a house and you see the front of the house, you see the sidewalk, you see the landscaping, but that's not the foundational elements of the house. That's not the structure that really holds everything together. So when I talk about branding, it's really those foundational elements that set you up to actually hold that structure together and informs everything else. So the foundation informs the walls inform the facade informs, the landscaping you have and everything else. So it's really all those touch points that you do as a school, as an organization that create an image and a consistent experience with the families, the students, and the community that your school resides in. You were mentioning websites and brochures and stuff. It's those things. It's not just your logo. Some people put those together and say logo is brand, and it's so much more than that, but it's also, your mission and values, why you do what you do. It's every interaction someone has with the secretary in the office or the principal talking about the school or the textbooks you use, your website, really all those things. Even when you go out and play sports in the community, all those things make up your brand. It's much more comprehensive than just, we have a logo or, we have some colors. It's really all those things and can be very foundational to putting out that identity, that personality of your organization.
Okay, so I'm glad I asked because I think, I don't know, like me, I probably wouldn't have thought of all those things. It really does sound like a foundation or like gears running in the background that people don't often think of. Oh, there's behind that. Somebody put some thought into that. Somebody really had some focused effort. And now we see just the front of that. So with that definition, it sounds like brand is a pretty broad term and there's a lot behind it. And I think, like you said, we often just think of the logo at the top of the stationery, or the logo on our athletic uniforms. It's bigger than that. So talk to us about the impact of the brand. You mentioned it a little bit, but
Sure.
Why is it needed? What is it trying to accomplish?
So branding helps cast a vision because it's ultimately not about what it looks like. When I'm working with my own clients and helping them with a brand, or when you mentioned, I've helped other Christian schools with a brand, I'm asking, not what does it look like? Because at the end of the day, what it looks like, while it matters, is not the primary thing that matters. The primary thing that matters is the mission. So we want everything to build out of that mission and flow out of that mission. And the mission, which is, reaching students, parents, communities for Christ, both now and having those students grow in the future and take Christ into their communities, that's what matters. And so the brand helps us, one, clarify this is the vision of what we want to do and where we want to go. And then the brand helps inform any tactics that help us communicate that to students, family, communities. And it could even help inform, what programs you're going to offer at your school, how you're talking to people about what you do, the tone of voice you use, the graphics you use as well. So really everything stems from that foundational mission that sets the tone for the brand decisions you're going to make after that.
So I think what I hear in what you're saying is it screams a lot of thought, a lot of communication, a lot of planning. It's not just, oh, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And I think sometimes we jump to that, but I'm hearing so much like there is a lot of thought behind this, a lot of intentionality. So kind of continuing along that strand of still kind of defining what we're talking about, for those of us, myself included, who are not trained in this field, we're the homegrown tinkerers, we tend to use terms interchangeably. So I think some areas that are often in the same bucket are branding, marketing, and sales. And we just kind of blur those all together. But from what you've already said, those are very separate, because the way I'm hearing you use them, they're very separate but interconnected elements. Can you break those down a little bit more? Talk to us about what's the difference between branding, marketing, and sales?
Sure. I usually draw them out for students and have kind of a Venn diagram of those three things working together, because they're all interconnected. They all kind of do similar things. But brand, I would say, is that strategic vision for starting to implement your mission, the personality of your organization, your core values and the characteristics that come from that, which would inform actions. So branding, I would say vision, if you want to think that way, strategic vision. And then marketing would be taking that strategic vision and coming up with tactics to put that out into the world. So tactics, you have brochures, you have your website, you have social media, and all those things that you get the word out about what's happening at your school community. And that might be with parents. It also might be, we have this play and we want to invite the community into our school to do that. But that messaging would kind of stem from the brand, but it's very tactical as to how you get that out. So branding, vision, marketing, tactics. And then I would say sales is relationship building and also bringing people into actual, in business, we'd call them customers, but into your school family. So for sales, sometimes we think of sales like, oh, used car salesman, whatever. But sales is really about service. How can we serve these families and our community by bringing more students into our student body? So how you do that involves a little bit of marketing, but also involves that relationship building that's come meet us, come see us, come talk to us, come visit us. And then ultimately, hopefully, sign on to be in our student body. So also informed by brand. So brand, vision, marketing, tactics, sales, service relationships.
Okay, so I'm hearing much how these inform each other. I like how you said that. They really are playing in, and we have to have a nice, consistent package if we're going to really focus on our mission. And that brand has to be very clear. Again, a lot of intentionality. I like that you use the word tactical to be intentional. And that word seems really intense for what we might think when we're creating a sign or brochure. But that's what it is. We're out there fighting for customers. We're looking for the right students. We want people to know who we are. So tactical is a great term about just being intentional. And talking about trying to get those customers in, every Christian school wants their school to stand out. They want them to be different, to be known. But actually getting there can be really daunting. And often, I think it's just a mystery. Like, how do I make myself known and be different? Especially when so many schools don't have that professional guidance. So, Kristen, what would you say are some pointers you would have for schools who are looking to be distinct and to be memorable in who they are?
Right. And branding, marketing, and design, and sales as well, it's all about that consistent, impactful, memorable appearance to the people we want to involve in our school, right? And our community. So one, what I just said, which is consistency. You have to make sure that you have a consistent message and that you have a consistent vision. that you have a consistent style of communication and consistent visuals as well. If you're doing pink and blue somewhere or like red and green somewhere, and then other places you're doing the exact opposite of that, yellow and purple, gold or whatever, people may not realize it's coming from the same place. It's not consistent, one consistent voice. So consistency is a big deal. Being clear is another big aspect of it. And so everything you want to do, you want to make sure it's consistent, it's clear, and that it's strategic. It fits into some kind of plan, so you don't go rogue or whatever with one thing or another. But you're, working together, especially if you are in a position where you don't have a branding team or even someone that you work with, like an agency or something. You want to make sure you're all on the same page, you're all speaking the same language, and that you're consistently putting that out for other people.
Okay, so the big term I take away from that part is consistency. When they see it, they should know it's you. Not like, wow, like you said, well, we changed colors since last week. Or I love it when, a mascot is, a tiger or something. Every time a tiger comes out, it's a little different piece of clip art. Find your tiger and stick with, just that, even down into the little details of staying consistent. So that's really, really good advice. So again, for many Christian schools, they aren't going to have someone on staff who serves as their school's designer. They're pulling from volunteers, parents, in-house talent. So in that, the term graphic design is often used, such as asking if anyone knows a graphic designer that they could use. Kristen, where is graphic design in all this that you've shared, or is it? Is it a part of this?
So it is a part of this. It probably falls under the marketing aspect, but it could also fall under the brand, because brand is about identity. Your visual identity, your visual vision is part of that. So usually when I'm setting up a brand guide for a school or a business, it involves what their logo looks like, what their colors are. And I would say, make sure that anyone you work with knows those foundational elements, right? If they don't know what your colors are, they'll probably use whatever they think looks best, which might not create that consistency that you want. Graphic design falls under the tactical part as well, because it is going to be a part of brochures and websites and social media. So you want to make sure those all look like they belong in the same family. They might not all have to be exactly the same, but they should be using the same colors, hopefully the same typefaces. And like I said, if you hold one piece up next to the other, they should look like they belong together. And so if you can't afford to hire a graphic designer for that everyday type of thing, even working with someone to help you set a vision for that and maybe set up some templates or something you can use like a Canva resource to help define the vision is really helpful for every piece that goes forward. Because I know there are times where you have to design your own thing, you have to do your own flyer, whatever. But as long as it can be a consistent vision and look related, that's the best part if you are going to DIY.
I like the idea of a template, because if you work with someone and you have a limited opportunity even to work with them, just getting some template ideas, that schools put out the same thing over and over, brochures and newsletters and things like that. But I really like the idea of a template that's really doable, so you don't feel like you have to engage someone every time. That's great. So this whole episode has been packed with incredible information and really practical tips for schools. But as we wrap up, Kristen, I wondered, what would you say to educators who might be listening and thinking, okay, we need to address the brand at our school. We need to do something. We need to get some consistency. We need to back up and kind of bring our package together of who we are and how we want to communicate that. We need to rein in our brand. Maybe they even need to revisit how to communicate what their school is, both to guests and to their own families. And some of them probably just need to back up and start from scratch. So this sounds big. It sounds expensive. It sounds overwhelming. But from what you have shared, the results are impacting. It's worth it. So what would you say to schools who recognize the need and want to take the next step? What would you say?
I'd say the first step is determine who your leadership is that needs to speak into the brand, because it won't probably be everyone. My most recent project, it was 2 school administrators, they had 2 teachers who were advisors, and they had a parent on the advisory board as well. So it was a small group. Now that group, once we worked on things, would take it out and get some feedback, but it was a core group that were the decision makers, because when you have too many voices, it can be hard to decide what is the actual thing we're working towards. So decide on your core group decision makers and your process. And then I'd say start with these 4 questions. So the first question I would ask is, what do you do? And then secondly, why do you do those things? So what do you do? Why do you do those things? Who do you do those things for? And how will you build an experience that represents 1, 2, and 3? So if you can answer those things, kind of tease them out, flush them out, those 4 questions will really take you far in setting that solid foundation for your organization's identity.
I love the thought process that you keep emphasizing, and it's sticking out to me, and I'm sure our listeners are hearing that too. Sometimes we just have to stop and talk about it. We get going. Schools are so busy. There's so much going on, but those 4 questions are so important. What do you do? Why do you do it? Who is it for? And how can you build an experience to answer those first 3? And I think that's great. And that's not a 5-minute conversation in the hallway. That's really taking a good look at who you are and building from there. So I think that's great. Did you have any other closing comments on that? I think that was just excellent.
That's where I would start. And that doesn't necessarily have to lead to huge changes of we need to change our logo and our colors. Because like we said, that's the front of the house. It could just be we need to talk about our house differently with the same logo and the same colors. So if you can set aside that afternoon to get clear and be consistent and be intentional, I think you'll really have a good foundation to move further with your brand.
This has been so helpful. I know from being at a Christian school where we did not have design or branding professionals, we just did our own thing. This type of insight and help is just so valuable to have. So thank you for breaking these elements down for us. Thank you for your great tips and your great advice. You really brought a lot to the table today, and I know the listeners really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks, Jenny. I enjoyed being here with you, and I hope it is valuable for the listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you were challenged and encouraged as I was. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to submit questions for upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now, it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day, because every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now go do what God has called you to do.